Hey everybody, Mike Naparano with NovaWorks Color Imaging. Um, Obviously we've got a frequently asked questions page, but I wanted to kind of go over the common questions that we get at the shows and from potential customers and even existing customers on photo booth wraps. Um, Obviously, as we've talked about, there's a few different versions of the material that we use. We've been wrapping all kinds of equipment for 10 plus years, vehicles for even longer. So we kind of know what's the best material to use for each type of job. Um, for most of the metal booths and even the acrylic booths, our low tack is probably the best material to use. It's the easiest to install, easiest to remove, works fantastic. Our next version of the material is our standard tack. It's kind of, we call it our high tack on the website, but it's actually our standard tack. And it's ideal for those that, if you want to have a more permanent graphic installation, of course I say permanent, they're all removable. It's just going to be a little bit more work to remove. It's tackier, so it's a little bit harder to install, but again, that's all relative. Once you're comfortable doing these, it's not that bad. We also do have a very high tack material. We don't promote it much, but it's great for those road case style booths. We can do coolers, etc. with that material. It is quite a bit more expensive, but it is yet another option that will perform very well and will stick. So that's always something that we can discuss as well. Then we have our two primary finishes. And actually, to get into that, we get the common question of, well, why do we want to laminate? Why do you laminate your prints? Lamination, the main purpose of lamination is to protect the print. So both for abrasion resistance and UV protection. Now obviously when you've got a wrap that's going on for an event that's only going to be on 4 hours or maybe 1 or 2 days, that may not be a huge important item for you. But you have to remember two other things that laminate does. Number one is it adds a thickness and a rigidity to the material, which helps simplify the installation, keeps it from stretching as well, and then also makes it that much easier to remove. It also gives it its final finish. So if you want a matte finish, we can do that. If you want a gloss, high gloss finish, we can do that. So that's yet another benefit to the laminate. Obviously, booth templates is another common one we get. We have helped create booth templates and lots of other equipment. But when it comes to booth templates, we typically suggest that you talk to your manufacturer that your booth is and get the template from them. There's different versions of the templates that exist out there, different versions of the booths, excuse me. So that way you're ensured to get the right template for the booth. If you've got a booth that we don't have a template for, again, please check our frequently asked questions. We've got a couple options for you in that regard. But that's our best solution there. One of the other things that we don't talk a whole lot about, but we have some videos showing some installation methods on different pieces of equipment, including our printer wraps. And those just kind of show you some tips and tricks on how to do it. Because one of the common things that a new person would do is they'd peel the vinyl graphic right off the backing paper and try and start to stick it. Obviously that can be quite tricky because number one, you've got a big piece of loose vinyl. It could stick to itself, it could stick to other things. So please watch the videos that kind of show some of those tips and tricks on just cutting off a bit of the backing, using that as your alignment, get your reference, start the panel, and then you can work your way down and do what you need to do. Another issue is that we haven't really discussed is prepping for the wrap. One of the things, especially with a new booth, make sure you clean the surfaces well. At a minimum, we recommend that you use a little bit, just take a spray head if you want from a spray bottle and put it in a bottle of rubbing alcohol. 70%, 80% alcohol is fine, but use that as your cleaner. It won't leave any residues behind. It does a good job of cleaning. That's not to say that you can't do a more aggressive clean. If you've got a lot of stuff on it, you can use something like acetone, mineral spirits, or just use denatured alcohol. It's actually a safer option. That way you don't have to worry about damaging your finish. Most of the powder coated finishes won't get damaged by those chemicals, but they're very aggressive. So typically you're safe with just using rubbing alcohol by itself. Wipe it down really good, get into those cracks, crevices, especially the edges, and then make sure it dries well before you start to try and apply the graphics. Okay, another common question is the use of heat. Obviously, if you've watched any videos of people doing vinyl, you've probably seen them with a heat gun or a hair dryer, etc. It's not really required with our materials, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have around. A hair dryer works great. Just get used to continually moving it as you're heating the vinyl, so that you don't burn an area, overheat it, etc. And as you're moving it with the heat, just every once in a while move off and touch the vinyl. It should be warm, but it shouldn't melt or it shouldn't burn you. But if it's not really warm, then you haven't quite gotten it warm enough. Now, why would you need to use heat? One of the things that we typically do if we've got equipment here that we're wrapping is, especially once we've washed it or cleaned it, let's say we did our rubbing alcohol clean, a lot of times we'll go over it with the heat gun or, again, hair dryer, just to evaporate the alcohol, make sure it's nice and dry, lets us to apply the graphics a little quicker than sitting around and waiting for it to evaporate. So that's one benefit. The second is, let's say that you're applying the graphic and you've started to align it and you just didn't quite get it right. You have to pop it up. Popping it up by itself using our material shouldn't cause any problems, any stretches, anything like that on the material. However, sometimes people will start the process, they think they're pretty lined up, they'll get it about halfway installed and then realize, man, it's a little off. And they have to try and yank it all off to redo it. That may cause you to have some lines and wrinkles in the material. So that's when you just want to kind of hang it by your hand and just kind of go over it with the heat, and it'll work those wrinkles, those little scars, if you will, to the vinyl will work themselves out. And just let it cool, and then it's ready for you to apply again. Next thing is, it also helps. Different booths and different templates are different. Obviously, they're different. But sometimes on some of the booths, you'll notice that when you align one panel and you install it, and let's say you're doing a side, and then you go and do the front, and there might be a little bit of an overlap where the materials hit, rather than being cut short to the corner. They actually overlap at the corner, which is great for the wrap because it hides, obviously, what's underneath it. But it may not want to lay down real well, especially the low tack, depending on your booth. And that's where hitting it with some heat and then working it down with your finger will really help. It'll soften that up, help it take the turn, and help it lay down. So that's one other benefit to heat. Again, I would say most of our customers don't need to mess with it, but it's just one of those things where it certainly doesn't hurt to have it in your arsenal. It does help if you get stuck with certain issues. We've had to talk people through that before. But again, it's just something to think about now. If you have any questions or would like more information, please feel free to contact us. You can hit our website at www.novaworks.com. Of course, our specialty site at photoboothwraps.com, or catch us on Facebook at NovaWorks.